Welcome to the Outer Realm with Michelle Desrochers and Amelia Pisano. Airing live on the United Public Radio Network, 105.3 FM in New Orleans.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Wednesday night segment of The Outer Realm. We are broadcasting live on the United Public Radio Network UFO Paranormal Radio Network, 105.3 FM from the Gulf Coast and 107.7 FM from New Orleans. We're fully sponsored by the amazing folks over at Folgers Coffee, who have been a part of our journey for the last several years. So thank you, Folgers. We appreciate you so very much. Couldn't or wouldn't do it without you. So thank you. Also, thank you to Justice Snicker, a.k.a. Dr. Snicker, Sonic Surgeon, for the contribution of his time, his music, and his voice for the intro that you just heard. He's an award-winning composer of Halloween, horror, sci-fi, and dark wave electronic music, which can be found on all of your favorite music streaming platforms. Also, thank you to Steve McGinnis, the artist behind the banners and logos here at the show. Check him out on Facebook and Instagram. Also specializes in the horror genre, but does phenomenal commission pieces of all sorts. So what's new here, of course, is Amazon Alexa. So you enjoy the show, you enjoy the channel. All you have to do if you have Alexa is say, Alexa, podcast United Public Radio, and up comes everything. Nice and easy. You don't even have to think about it.
Twilight Zone. Do 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 do.
I know. Spooky.
Those things freak me out.
I know they listen to everything. I don't like it, but anyway,
Everything listens to everything now.
Yeah, listening to us. Mm-hmm. But tonight we welcome the return of Jack Roth and Jon Sumple, and these guys are awesome. Jack has been on several times. This will be John's third time, and you guys will remember them from J3 films. They've done I believe, extraordinary Stan Romanek Story, The Seeding, and The Revelations. All three films have done phenomenal things. They're working on all kinds of things, apparently. So tonight's going to be a little bit of a different twist, though. Not what you're accustomed to having with these guys by any means, because they're going to be talking about soul connections. Soul connections are fun.
Oh, my gosh. And they're not always good.
No.
Everybody thinks,
especially those karmic ones.
right? When you say soul connection, the first thing a young lady will say, hi, Ellen. First thing a young lady or young man would say is my twin flame. Not necessarily wah, wah, wah.
Your twin flame may not even be back in this lifetime with you.
Yeah.
Right.
And soul connections, I mean, they're going to be on soon, and it can be familiar. Yeah. It could be anything.
Could be past life. Could be, oh my God. It could be something
I'm positive it was my past dog.
Let's see.
It was my twin flame.
But
it was my twin flame.
See? Yep.
My little Muppet.
He did look like a Muppet, though. Muffet or Muppet?
Muppet. He was my little Muppet.
Yeah.
I just loved him so much.
Right.
But yeah. I swear there's soul connections with a lot of animals. I feel it anyways. I remember being at the Toronto exhibition years and years ago when they had horses and we were in the stables, and my brother's girlfriend's best friend at the time jumped up too fast on the horse. Now, I've never been around a horse, and the horse like neighed and moved back and shook their head, and I went close and I went, "It's okay, honey." I was 11 or 12.
Right.
It's okay. And put my hand like on, and it just submitted, like just so submissive. And my brother's like, wow. Even
I'm a
I was
horse
like,
whisperer, damn it.
I was like, holy cow,
I
man, put
know.
me on one of these things. Because I had just ridden an elephant. So I thought I was like,
Right.
I'm just kidding.
I'm all
But I'm
that in a
saying
bag of
horses
chips, right?
are incredible creatures.
They're very intuitive.
And
Very intuitive.
so are whales and
Mhm.
dolphins and
Mhm.
I believe everything has a soul.
Well, of course, everything has essence. I mean, we've even talked about whales and dolphins with extraterrestrials and how it was believed. Carl Sagan really believed that dolphins
Oh,
had
I love him.
that connection to be that they were the connection to our being able to communicate with ET. And right away, it brought me back to that dang Star Trek episode with the whales. I'm thinking, oh my God, the way we're beating up our sea life, we're not gonna we're gonna
My
be
gosh.
those people who need two humpback whales and can't get any,
Excuse me.
But
Well,
anyway,
an octopus, like
well,
how
they say
intelligent
they're
are
not even
they?
well, they say they're not even from here.
You know what?
Right, just saying.
I'm gonna confess I did eat octopus a few times in my
Oh,
life.
I can't even say
But
this.
after
Heck.
I watched the documentary,
Right.
my cousin who is an animal activist, and they're, like vegans in my families, and I wrote them. I'm like, I will never, ever eat
No,
octopus again. I said,
no.
I can't. For me, they just became like little real beings, like,
They are just saying.
because when you grow up on a lake, you're
I know.
fishing and that, and you don't
Yeah.
really think twice about that's dinner
Right.
kind of thing. Not that we could get octopus in our lakes, but
Oh, but still.
and being a European, like Mediterranean diet, it's very present in
I've
that
traveled the
diet.
world and I've attempted things and kind of went, yeah, no.
I can't eat it anymore. I can't look at it. I can't. Yeah, I just can't. And I used to eat a lot of it.
Well, our guests are here, so we're
Oh,
going to bring
yay.
them on, and we are
Okay.
going to get to the topic of soul connections for those who are just tuning in. So we've got John and Jack. Hello.
Hi.
How's it going?
Hey, everyone.
We started the show
Hey.
for you.
John, you have to unmute your microphone. Yeah, perfect. Outstanding. Yeah, there we are. How's it going, guys? How's it going?
Good. Yeah, really good. It's been an interesting hour for John and I.
Oh.
Like, it's just like, your day is slow, and then all of a sudden it's like,
Yeah, because you have a radio
very
show
interesting
to
very
do an hour
quickly.
later, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you have to get everything all at once. But I know that's okay. Good things coming. Good things coming. That's what you just have to keep saying. Things are coming.
That's right.
Right. So soul connections. Definitely an interesting topic, but I'm curious as to, because you guys are known for your film trilogies and things like that, and everything is like extraterrestrial based, and this is what a lot of people will know you guys from. Not that you haven't done other things, but these were really popular. It was a popular series. Why Soul Connections? Where does this come from? Whoever wants to go first.
You got a couple hours?
Yes,
I think we do, actually.
Yeah.
But
nobody on after us either. We can keep going.
We have a few episodes.
That's a perfect question. And first of all, I have to start by saying, and this is probably me getting older, but I forgot that Gettysburg was October, and I'm like, oh, tonight's Gettysburg. I got to go over my notes. I got to go over and I'm like in the last half hour, I'm like, oh, it's on Soul Connections. So I was like, but we know we go. We're ready to go.
You guys are great. You're well versed. You don't need your notes.
I don't. Yeah, no, I don't think we do. I mean, I was gonna give you some numbers on Gettysburg that are pretty intense, but other than that, anyways,
we will do it. And I've been a couple of times, so I will.
Oh yeah, that's gonna be a great show.
It will.
I need to go.
It will.
Oh, you need to go.
I need to go.
Yeah, I would say that the Soul Connection thing started, to be honest with you, as a personal journey, and something that I dragged John into. Not that I had to drag him,
Mine goes way back. Mine goes
like,
way back when I was 10 years old.
So, you know, we were always having conversations about it, but for the purposes of tonight's show, we're working on several projects right now that are involved around this idea of soul connections. And what I would say is it's again, we can get into the details of the journey, of the personal journey, and how John and I, how it all, which is always the case, because that's how it started with the UFO stuff.
Right.
And that's how it started with the ghost stuff.
Right.
So it's always a thing, something happens. And, you know, where I would say we're aware enough, right, to understand and trust our intuition that it's like, okay, we got to follow up on this. So, so basically, there's a couple of the projects are, there's a couple of books that / documentaries that we're working on right now and just developing from that standpoint. So, and I'm Karen just came on and I was like, sorry, Karen, I think I told her it was Gettysburg, but anyway, she'll love it.
Stay a while.
You'll have to wait for that one.
Yeah.
But it's this started because here's what it comes down to. We go through life, right? And as we go through life, we have synchronistic encounters. They're not coincidental. They're synchronistic, and there's a reason they happen. And how do we navigate those situations? Like everyone thinks of like, okay, soul connection, soulmate.
Right.
You know, like who are you dating?
Why don't we talk about what it is first? Because Alan is asking. What is a soul connection? So why don't we start there and then and move forward?
Okay. So you have to start from a place where you at least can consider that we are spirit in human form, right? And this is just a temporary body shell that we're in, and that we're truly spirit. We have souls, and that when we die, I'm looking at the comments and I'm cracking up. But when we die,
do we have to turn that screen off for you?
No, that's okay.
I'm kidding. I'm joking. We can't turn it off.
Our consciousness survives death. And from that point, if we consider that, then we have to start asking a lot of questions, and that we as humans ask because of the way our brains work and our egos work. But there isn't a person out there that can't speak to this, because it's a soul connection could be someone you go through your entire life with as a spouse. A soul connection could be a mother or father. It could be a sister or brother. It could be a friend. It could be someone you meet for 5 minutes, but that meeting is so powerful and makes such a difference in your life that too is a soul connection. So you have, if you start piecing it together, we're individual souls. We have free will all the time. And we go and we have soul groups, and we talk about the idea of a soul group, a group of people who reincarnate over and over again together. Sometimes half do, some don't, whatever, but there's always that connection because they're working up there while you're working down here on the same thing. And you are, here to grow and learn, but there's certain things that you agreed to work on. And when people talk about soul group, because you have soulmates, you have soulmate, and people think of that immediately as romantically. And it is because it's like being two sides of the same coin, right? It's very, like the same, it's the closest you can be to another entity or spirit, or it's this incredible sense of closeness. And then you have your soul group, and which is, they can range anywhere from 10 to 15 20 people. And I say this not as an expert from the standpoint as I've been up there and I've come back and now I'm reporting it to you guys. I cannot be certain about this, but from all the research and all the experiences we've had, we have this understanding of this kind of thing. But what we're trying to do, just like we did with any project we work on. So we work on the UFOs and the ETs. It's like, well, how do people, we're presenting this and we're trying to help people navigate these things. If you think you've been abducted, or you think you've had a false pregnancy, or you think that, or you're just human and you're like, what's going on? What's the end game here? And you're concerned about it. What is this all about? So with Soul Connections, it's more, it's definitely more, it's metaphysical, but it's the fact that we're constantly having these interactions in our lives, and that we need to understand that there's a reason why we feel certain ways about certain people. And it's energetic, right? It's vibrational. And it's when you take real stories, right, from people saying, oh, you hear these about these amazing love stories. And I think we're all right. We all love a great love story, whether it's Romeo and Juliet. Most don't work out in the end.
Right. So that would sound like it's like more of a karmic soul connection, right? As opposed to the twin flame type.
Right? Exactly. But it always comes down to be in the moment in your life.
Right.
Be in those moments where you embrace what's happening. If you have a relationship that lasts a week and it's this torrid relationship that was never going to last, appreciate being in that moment with that person, because there's a connection there for whatever reason, and whatever that connection is, don't run from it. And don't think that everything's always a coincidence, because it's not. There's a synchronicity to things. There's a serendipity, like the movie Serendipity, which is a great movie where you just see that these two people are meant to be together. We don't know how it's going to work out in the long run. It could be Romeo and Juliet, but at that, for those 2 hours that you're watching that movie, you're rooting for them, because who doesn't want that kind of love?
That's right.
And it's connections. So we're really talking, that's why it's Soul Connections. And there's a lot, and we can talk about, like Jon said, you have a couple hours, but that's basically what we're talking about when we're talking about soul connections.
One thing that I would add to that is that instead of thinking it just from a spirit perspective, think about it as energy. Right. So from an energetic point of view, there's 3 possibilities: positive, negative, and neutral. That's all that there is. So in the quantum field, like attracts like, negative sometimes attracts like, but often repels, and neutral is neutral. So when you're feeling an attraction to something in that moment, like Jack was saying, you got to go with it. You got to feel it. You have to, if it's a hunch or a gut feeling or intuition, whatever you want to call it, it's likely due to an energetic connection. So like he said, go with it, go with the flow type of thing.
It's like the chemistry between actors on screen. And Romeo and Juliet had such a great impact, their story, that to this day, they are still writing letters of love, for looking for their soulmate, so to speak. To Juliet in Verona, Italy, and putting them in the walls. And then there's a group of ladies. It's not just a movie. It's real. There's a group of ladies who actually answer these letters.
Right.
Yeah.
That's the kind of impact that story had. Centuries later. Hi, Dan. See you tomorrow.
I'll see you tomorrow, Dan. But I think my favorite soul connection is the past life soul connection, because you know, you basically spend your whole life just meeting people. But when you just seem to know, when you meet somebody, you just don't know, where do I know you from? Why do I feel so connected to you? Why does everything feel comforting when you're with this individual? Like, I think that's one of my favorites, because when you start getting into things like twin souls, things of that nature, you get that sense of mourning, like that dark hole, that void. For me, because I think when you start remembering, you know, like, because they don't all come back with you. Your twin flame may never come back in this lifetime with you, but because of your other half, for real, with, you know, with energy wise, you just spend that time somehow feeling like you lost something, that you, like, for me, I call it mourning, because I've been able to have regressions and such, and I know what some of those are, but I know why you're not allowed to always remember, because because it impacts everything here.
You can't do what you're supposed to do.
Right.
No, and I've lived that. I've had one of those things happen, and it was really hard to bring myself out of that.
That's tough.
Yeah, it
And
is.
Michelle and I have a huge soul connection in past life.
And I've thought about that, because here you are, you guys, you're on the show and you have this really good rapport, and it's like there's a reason for that. And sometimes it could be negative. Like I've talked to people, and I came to the understanding that, it could be like if you think about the Apollo program and all those scientists and the astronauts that worked on getting man to the moon, those were groups of people that were most likely parts of the same soul group who were down here working on things. And in order to accomplish that, they had to be together, and they had these incredible friendships and relationships. And sometimes it was hard, and they hated each other, and the whole 9 yards. But guess who was also a soul group? Hitler and his cronies.
It's not all good. It's
right. So you could come down and completely fail, or even if say, well, we're going to do that in this lifetime, we're just going to be genocidal lunatics. And I don't know how, again, there's to know exactly how it works is impossible, but that's another soul group. They were bonded in some depraved way. So that maybe they come back again as something else and do good, or they come back as or they come back as people who are,
victimized
because of their religion or because of their race, so they learn that part of it, that side of it. So
do you think the conditioning, guys, that we receive here in our physical life hinders a lot of us being able to recognize our soul connections?
That's the whole point of what we're trying to do, because what we like to do with these, whether again books, documentaries, whatever we learn and talk about, it's exactly that, because can a soul connection survive societal norms? We have a good friend of ours from England who said exactly that. He's like, that's really, when you think about it, if it's not a societal norm, and my story kind of ties into that, because it was just not a normal thing. But if we're indoctrinated to believe certain things. So when the universe is screaming at us, sometimes we don't recognize it. And you have to be woken up in order to understand and see it, and understand that, oh my God, that was a synchronicity, man. That's the universe screaming at me, and I need to act on this.
So pay attention to synchronicities. Like I personally don't believe in coincidences, but I do believe in synchronicities.
I also believe in misunderstanding them, because recently that's what happened in my personal life. And thinking that there's all these synchronicities and this is supposed to be this way, and then realizing, maybe these messages were sent to me to push this person out of the way. For like, I see that differently. I look at it a little bit differently, because at the beginning of the show, I told you my soul connection, my husband's going to kill me, was with my dog. But like, I'm not kidding. That dog was everything to me. He used to always joke, it's the dog, our daughter, and then him on the address. When no one writes a letter anymore, but you get the point. But anyways, like, it can be with anything, right?
I think another important thing too is that as you start to experience these things, they're rarely are they fleeting and momentarily, they happen once in a lifetime type of thing. When you tune into it, you start to recognize it more and more frequently.
Yeah.
And when you kind of allow yourself, it's not like you're an open vessel and you're attracting all this energy, but you're allowing yourself to tap into those synchronicities, to say, what is the purpose of this person, this moment, it's places too. Energetics from places that you've been to can have a huge impact, because chances are pretty good during your soul's journey, it's been in that location or experienced a moment that resonates with you. How many times have you been somewhere where you're like, I feel like I've been here before.
Or it feels like
I feel
home.
Connected here.
Right.
Yeah, it feels like home. Absolutely. I remember the very first time I went to visit Seattle. I was on a business trip. I'd never been there. I'd only seen pictures and read
Me
about
too.
things.
My
In
first
fact,
time was business.
yeah, and it was in the early 90s that I said, well, I got a trip, so I'm just going to go out there on a San Francisco trip. I had a friend up there, popped up there, and as soon as I was there, I was like, this is home. This is where I'm supposed to be.
Have you ever seen a moon like that before, John?
No, it
right?
just everything
There's a
about
reason
it.
why they call it the Emerald City. Oh, it's stunning.
But I did. I sat in the middle of a park in Gasworks Park and was in tears. I was only there for 2 days, and I was in tears. I'm like, I have to move.
To me, that's beautiful.
Yeah,
because you're drawn to places.
And then I moved there.
You moved there. I love Seattle. I feel
that
way. Except that water
places
bridge
that I go to, but then I think I would only go to places I felt connections to on an average. So I think that it's wonderful. And in moving there, do you find that do you find anything's coming back to you?
Yeah, it was. I feel that so much. What I felt more than anything while I was there is that this is where I'm supposed to be. Fed my soul, fed my energies. I felt much more comfortable. Maybe it's because I was not a huge fan of heat and humidity in South Florida. That, moving from South Florida to Seattle is polar opposites. Yeah. But it was something that once I was there, I was like, this is where I'm supposed to be. And that really meant, a lot to me at that moment in time. And it was transformational. It was going through career changes. And if I had been somewhere else, it could have been worse. So it was ultimately, I think, the right place to be. And met people as a result of that. That happened relatively quickly that I would never have met if I had stayed in South Florida. And it actually sent me on this journey. And a lot of what, Jack and I wound up doing was a result of some of the things that I did when I was in Seattle to kind of, connect with some people and amplify the opportunities in the doc space.
And that's the idea of flow versus fighting, right? So you're flowing, you're living an authentic life by following these things, by saying, you know what, I feel so strongly about this place or this person or whatever. I'm not going to run from it. I'm going to run to it. And there might be pain associated with that. I mean, and I think a lot of times what happens is there's a couple of things. Michelle, you talked about indoctrination early on. Sometimes people get hurt young, someone dies, so whatever happens, and then they close off. And this is normal. I'm not saying it's not. It's normal human reaction to things. They don't want to get hurt again. So they put up a wall. If you put up that wall, you may never get hurt again, but you're not living life. That's not the whole point of what life is. And the other part of that is if you grow up, I mean, if we're having this conversation with evangelicals as opposed to people who are Buddhist or Taoist or Hindu, they believe in reincarnation as a fact. There's no questioning reincarnation. So they understand this and they understand the idea of that. But other cultures, depending on how you grow up, might not believe in that as, oh, well, no, we don't reincarnate. So how, if that's the case, then how could I feel some places so familiar? Because there's no way I was ever there. Right. But if you open your mind to all of these beautiful, wonderful possibilities that this universe holds for us, and you say, you know what, I am going to do this and I'm going to fall madly in love and I might get annihilated because of it. But when I look back when I'm 90, hopefully you live that long and you're like, glad I did that. Because I learned a lot from it. It's like John is always he's great about that. He's like, no, I'm doing it. And nothing holds him back. He's like, I feel it. I'm doing it. And most of us, I think, struggle more with that because either fear, right? But what's ego? Fear. It's that human brain thing that gets in our way.
It's fight or flight. But Seattle, John, I think you agree with me, is a very spiritual city. It's right on the water. And
the Native American.
Honestly, and I honestly felt like I was in Canada when I was there, like around Pike's Market. I did. I felt like I was very much at home. Everybody's really friendly and they're talking to you. And it's just a very relaxed. And then all the music in the streets, in the park, and everybody's so chill. What a beautiful place.
Yeah. Right. And some people could care less. Like you know what I mean?
Yeah,
like,
I know. If you're
feeling it, John's feeling it. John and I feel the same way about New Mexico. Yeah. The first time I ever went to New Mexico, I was home. I felt like I was finally
deep breath,
home.
right? Deep breath.
and I've been drawn to it ever since. And now, since I know there was a connection in a past life where I was spent time in New Mexico, so it makes sense. The Southwest, the whole thing. So, but everyone's different, right? Someone who loves New Orleans could be someone who hates New Orleans. There's a reason for, maybe they died a horrible death in New York
and
City.
Sometimes you're attracted to an area, not necessarily because you love it, but because you have to learn something by being there.
That's a great
Whether
point.
it's the, about yourself or about another person. Talking earlier about, sometimes you meet people and they're there to teach you a lesson. Sometimes, you're the bug and they're the windshield, and it's the worst part. It's much better when it's the other way around. But sometimes you need that. And somebody mentioned earlier about, growth through pain. That is part of the soul journey, is to experience everything. And what you learn from the positives and the negatives and the neutrals is what ultimately guides you to that next iteration of the soul. It's this elevation and constant, I guess, preparation for a return to source.
I really hope there's a lot of people, young people in the audience, because I wish that I knew that back then, because I think a lot of it comes with age, and it's great that we're talking about it, because we might be able to make it easier for people to go through that might be experiencing this and not understanding it. So I'm grateful.
I've spent my whole life that way.
I know.
I've always been tuned in.
Always knew that things were going to work out. Always knew that I just got to breathe and let go, and that I can't hold on. Those were things that I just knew. And I think
you make a good point, because I think that's part of it, is that the physical us has to be in control all the time.
Yes.
I don't think it's not easy for people to just say, okay, because I could be a bit of a meathead that way, throw caution to the wind, see what happens.
Just step in a car with her. Just saying about that, throw caution to the wind. Just let Michelle drive.
Right. So, yeah. But I think on an average, for people who need to have that control, because maybe they feel a lot of time that they're spinning out of control, how do you relinquish that? Like, what's your advice to people who struggle in that way?
Well, it's like having the angel and the devil on your shoulder, but instead of angel devil, it's intuition, ego. And I had John knows my story, and it's like, that's exactly, literally, people must have been looking at me like I was doing this, because I kept going back and forth. My ego kept getting in the way. My ego was like, I was freaking out. My head was spinning. And then my intuition's like, calm. It's like, listen, this is about to work. This is you have to, this is definitely something that's happening right now. So it's, I would say for people, listen, it's hard for a lot of people. And by the way, I have to say, Michelle, I can't get in, I'm good with it. I can't get in the comments for some reason, but, these comments are amazing. Like everyone's saying great things.
Click on it at the top.
Really, really great things.
Yeah, click on the comment on the
word comment beside private chat, and it'll open up for you.
Yeah, it's opened up, but I can't join the chat.
It doesn't say join the chat?
Yeah, you have to log into your either social account or YouTube.
Well, yeah, if you're on, because John's on YouTube, so he's able. Here you can see them, but no, you can't comment from it.
But no worries.
Only the host can do that. But
okay.
But here's a great question for you guys, though.
I think you have to open up. You will not experience this if you do not open up. If you stay closed off and you let fear dominate the decisions you make in your life, this will not happen for you. You will not live an authentic life. That people say, live an authentic life. You won't be able to, and you miss out. And I think that,
yeah, but along with that is that sometimes people are new to the, not necessarily the soul journey, but new to the concept in this earthbound existence. So sometimes it takes baby steps to kind of reconnect to it or to accept it. It may not be a matter of reconnecting. It may go against the grain of how you were raised, but you have the choice. It's one of the great things about being a human being is we have free will. We can always choose to change the direction that our life is going by taking small steps or gigantic leaps. It's really your comfort level. But, if it, you talk about, travel, like I've been traveling the world for the last 6 years as a digital nomad, and it's opened my eyes to a completely different existence as a human being, because I look at the world globally. So I also then now look at the universe cosmically, that we're all part of the same thing. So all you have to do is say, you go from your hometown, and I never leave my hometown because it's comfortable there. Well, go to the next town, or go to the next county,
Baby
or cross
steps.
the border and go to the next state. Take the baby steps that are going to expand the worldview that you have, because once you start to do those little things, I think it just starts happening faster and faster. The flywheel starts spinning, and more synchronistic things will enter your life, because you're allowing yourself, you're energetically opening the door to, and that's not necessarily saying negative things are going to happen, but whenever something does happen that might be perceived as negative, it's an opportunity to learn. It's definitely something that your soul is meant to be exposed to, because you're going to learn.
Yeah, it really is perspective. It really is perspective when something happens. Like I lost my brother. He was 51 years old, and he had an aneurysm in his aorta after a soccer game, and he was fit, healthy. I was 33. There's 18 years between us. He was my best friend. And one thing I learned from his death, and I've learned something from every death in my life, meaning perspective and soul connections. I understood that he did what he had to do and he had to move on. But I also learned to live my life a little bit less cautiously through him and through his death. I think he affected myself and my other two brothers the same way, where we changed the way we were living and lived a little bit more, because he worked hard and he played hard. He had that perfect balance, but.
And I guarantee you he's up there if he hasn't reincarnated. If he's up there, he's loving every second of what you're saying, because he's like,
talks to me all the time. I can't shut him up. And he was against this stuff. And we always make the joke that, Mike, you're on the other side and you talk a lot now. Like he pops up everywhere while I'm driving, funny. While I'm, I'm just somewhere and I'll hear him say something. He startles the crap out of me, but I'm all for it, because I knew there would be that connection after, because he was 18 when I was born. So he was almost like a dad to me, a young dad. But I do believe that he and I had that really, really tight connection. And people used to always talk about that. Like the oldest and the youngest, so close. Like there's 4 other kids between us. So, yeah.
But here's part of that comfort for you. And this is a big part of this.
I'll take it.
I was always afraid of death. I think when I was younger, I think a lot of people are afraid of death, and the things we do in life are because we're terrified of death. I think for most people, and whether it's an accumulation of wealth, because that's it, we're going to die, and so whatever. But when these things happen to you and you open up to it and you go on this journey and you realize some things, when you realize, and Jon and I wind up saying this all the time, when you are 100% positive that consciousness survives death, everything changes for you.
Yeah.
I'm no longer afraid of death. Like dying, there's that old Woody Allen line, like I'm not afraid of death, I'm afraid of dying. So
how I'm going out.
Process of dying.
Yeah, I'm more interested in the method of my demise, more so.
Yeah, exactly. I'm going to be eaten by a shark. I'm not thrilled about that, but afterwards I'll be fine. But
being able to communicate with the other side, as I thankfully can't have this gift. There isn't anything like that when you're talking to them. There's no remembrance of how they passed. They know what happened, but they don't feel it. It's just, this is what happened to me, and I'm here.
And it's always, everything happened the way it was supposed to happen. When you do spirit communication and whatever those experiences might be, to a spirit up there, they say that, because I'm very sensitive. So I'm like, I'm so sorry you died that way. You don't want, because you think about how they died, and they're like, yeah, everything happened the way it was supposed to.
Yeah, the way I signed up for.
It's an amazing thing, and then you realize, it can change your life so positively, I think. And if you go into it with the right intentions, like, again, it's all intent. You have to have the right intentions. You have to open up to love and light, right? You have to open up to the magnificence of this spirit world where it's this Christ consciousness, if you will. Call
It's
it what you want.
awareness. It's part of our evolution.
Exactly. So if you go into it that way, I think also we get indoctrinated. And I'm not saying these things don't exist. That's a different show.
Yeah.
But like, to me, I don't like to get involved in the demon stuff. I don't like, I watch Zach Baggins. I'm like, are you kidding me? Like, it's all dark and negative.
That's a different
TV
show.
shows, right? Those are right. It is. I mean,
no, I mean, like, that's a different show. There's a lot
totally
of questions
different
with
show.
Zach, but you know what? I've come to, because I saw my mom suffer and my brother go like this. Only a few years later, I lost a baby. Right after my mom. I suffered all these losses, and then my dad during COVID, and it wasn't COVID. I stopped being afraid of how it's going to happen and just want to live my life, because when it happens, I'll deal with it. But if you always have that fear of, oh my God, I don't want to get this because I'm going to suffer, I don't want to get that. Well, you're throwing it out there and you're kind of living it now. Just take in the moment in front of you. And it's okay to, believe me, it's okay to fall apart. I do that a lot. It's okay to have that human experience, but don't sit. Yeah, like Dolly says, worrying about death stops your living now. Life can be joy. Focus on that. Exactly. That's what I was trying to say. What she said. Thank you.
Worrying about a lot of things you have no control over can stop that. So
I'm the queen of that. So
I always say, be a participant in your life, whatever that may entail.
Don't just sit there. Don't just exist.
Yeah. Co-create in your life with, for yourself and with others, because part of it, that I think part of the soul journey is having a desire to make connections. Some people would prefer, whether you're introverted or extroverted, I don't think it really matters, because introverts can find their groups, they can find their safety zones and can put themselves out there at great expense sometimes, but they can connect. So it's a matter, I think, of putting yourself in positions where you allow that growth to happen. And then when that growth starts to happen, that the baby steps start to become larger strides, then you start to have those synchronistic things happen. And then you start looking at them very, very differently than you would have before. You might have feared synchronistic moments because you didn't look at them as synchronistic moments. You looked at them as coincidences, or why did this happen to me? Well, sometimes it's a part of your soul journey. It's not necessarily all, I think a lot of people think about, when they hear the word soul group, soul journey, they, immediately, we talked about this earlier, go to soulmate, that it's all about soulmates and that one person. Who's that one person for me? Well, we have dozens of connections, soul connections.
Especially soulmates,
and soul, people come into your life for a reason. They could come into your life for a moment. Jack said earlier, embrace that moment, embrace that time, whether it's a torrid love affair or a learning lesson. Sometimes when you get stopped in your tracks and you're like, oh shit, I was doing the wrong thing. This is, I'm so glad that was pointed out to me as a big of a hit to my ego that it was, or that I feel bad about myself. I just had a moment of learning that could,
but would you agree, John, that it's maybe not always about our lessons? Maybe we come into someone's life
the teacher.
For
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
Why is a child born with such difficulties that they're in one of those, I've seen this, and it's heartbreaking when they're in one of those chairs where they can't function at all. Well, they are most definitely there to teach their parents and the people around them.
Very much. I spent a lot of time in sick kids hospital because my daughter had a kidney transplant, and you learn to really appreciate what you have and not complain when you sit in one of those waiting rooms.
You learn patience. You learn
patience, kindness, compassion.
Right.
Yeah, absolutely.
And thinking about things from a not necessarily my personal space or my ego or my situation. You need to kind of look at a broader. I'll give you just an example. My birthday is August 6th, and it just happens to
Happy
be on
belated.
thank you, is the same day as the anniversary of the atom bomb in Hiroshima. And I happened to be in Hiroshima and went to today, and they're here right now, and went to the ceremony. And being in that moment, so at 8:15 is when the bomb was dropped. You can't help but think when you're there celebrating them, not celebrating, but at the memorial and having this collective gathering of people, to feel that energy. But then you realize as the seconds are approaching 8:15 when the bomb dropped, is that everybody's here enjoying their lives, doing their thing all around the world, in any city, but in a second, in a one flash of an atomic bomb, eliminated those lives in a second. So you appreciate things from a completely different perspective when you're in that moment, being like, wow, my journey could be over in the earthbound plane in a second, in a flash. But that doesn't necessarily mean, like Jack and I have had this conversation numerous times, we're much more comfortable knowing that if it ends in a flash, there's another beginning. There's something else out there that we're going to, that it's going to be much more glorious than what we can imagine this earthbound existence to be, because it's an energetic existence.
And that's not even thinking quantum or thinking dimensionally, where if there's truth to the fact that the soul, the essence, is split 4 times and we're living simultaneous existences, do we just join back with, the other part of ourselves in a whole other dimension? Like, do you believe in that theory?
It's hard to feel comfortable because it's just who knows?
Yeah.
And that becomes so complicated at that point.
Sure.
And I think some of it is, and I don't know, right? It could be true, that, and the old idea of soul fractals. And I know friends who, they're people I know, they're like, it's absolutely true. We have fractals, we have different, and I'm like, well, okay, if you believe, I can't even wrap that around my head.
Right.
And it's like, so let me stay with what, I'm just learning this, as I go along on my journey. If I was a quantum physicist, I'd be able to, be more, but like, I don't know. To me, it's all about how I feel. How is the journey going for you? So like, I think, you have this big picture stuff that we can talk about. What is soul connection? What does that all mean? Blah, blah, blah. And then you can kind of narrow it down, right? And you kind of start talking about people's individual experiences, which is always important. And that's why we did that in our films. Like, we wanted to share individuals' experiences, because that's what it's all about.
Right.
It's all about what happens to you. Your paradigm is based on your experiences. So, there are people watching this, and we tend to all agree that there's something here to this, but everyone has their own set of experiences that makes them think a certain way about death or life after death or soul connections. Like, what are those? I know some people that go through life and think all of this is hogwash. And are like, that's ridiculous. That's like, there's no such thing. You live, you die, you just, it's all biological and it's all brain driven. It's like it's almost all instinctual, as if we're animals, a dog, or a cat or something. And that's fine for them if that makes them comfortable. If they're most comfortable believing that, then fine. John and I have learned a long time ago, you're not going to change people's minds. You just present, just want to talk about it. Having these conversations is important, because then after the show, whoever listens to this is going to say, you know what? I heard this the other night, or they're going to say, I'm going to get a book on, this book on the Buddhism, and or an Ian Stevenson book on reincarnation, or I'm going to get like a book about soulmates, and they're going to look into it, right? And they're going to, they're going to find out more on their own.
Maybe they'll get on a plane and go to Bali. Who knows?
Well, that Ian Stevenson, he was the professor. He's passed on, but he was a maverick in reincarnation studies. He was with the University of Virginia, and they had this incredible parapsychology department, still do. And this was one of the areas, and he would go to the Far East. He would go to India, Bali, and all these countries that they believed in, and that he would study cases there. And there's entire books he wrote about documenting these cases in a very, I say scientific way, but in a very, there was tangible, there was a method, there was a scientific method to studying these cases. And when you have a child who's 2 years old saying, well, I was someone, and I lived in this village and it's 200 miles away. And my wife was so-and-so. And then they take this kid, right? They drive because he's never been to that village. They can't go 200 miles. So they drive with Ian, all these people 200 miles. And there's this woman and he's like, yeah, my husband died like 3 years ago. And the kid's holding her hand like they're still dating, like they're still husband and wife. Like, and then the birthmarks, right? Well, I was shot. I was strangled. Birthmark around the neck. Yeah. I was stabbed in the back. Birthmark in the back. You know, I died in a flood, and they have a huge fear of drowning, right? So there's all these things.
Edgar Casey touched on a lot of that.
And it's corroborative. And how many cases do you have to go over and over? And now it's becoming more. Now there's more cases in the United States because more and more people are opening up to the possibility that reincarnation is a real thing. And once that happens, then you can talk about past lives, and you realize it's like, you know, when I was young, I was always with a cowboy hat and gun and 2 6-shooters, and I was playing cowboys and Indians. And, you know, maybe by going on this journey, you realize down the road you were George Armstrong Custer, you know, or someone from the Wild West, whatever it is, this is the journey you're on. But I do agree with you, Michelle. I think there's a good reason why we tend not to remember. I think as kids we might for a couple years, but then we don't remember anymore because we have our current life
and programming
things we need to take care of.
You have to have your human experience as well, right?
Right.
And that's part of the journey of being here. You choose that experience as a soul. You're choosing that existence to go on a journey of education, learning.
I believe that as well, because a lot of people will say to me, well, why do people choose to be, you know, murdered or prostitutes? Or I said, well, sometimes you have to think, my opinion anyways, that it's an experience that's going to elevate their frequency and bring them up higher because of the understanding for the next life. It's an experience that needs to happen to move forward, you know, and I just feel that that's a great sacrifice that they're making.
I use this example, and it's just an example. It's not the be all end all, but let's say, for example, you're going to come back, right? You're up there, for lack of a better word, you're up there, how to describe it. You're in spirit and you're going to reincarnate, and you're talking to your soul group about it. And some other people are going to come back. Some are going to stay up there because they could be spirit guides and it's all planned out. And then you say, okay, I'm going to come back, but these are the challenges. I'm going to pick these parents. They're going to be very abusive. I'm going to be born in 1860 something or 70 something in London. And I'm going to be born to very poor parents. My father's an abusive alcoholic, etc. My mom's depressed because of it. And also, oh, by the way, I'm going to be severely mentally ill. Like I'm going to either have schizophrenia or bipolar disorder. Well, guess what? You're Jack the Ripper. So if I know that's like what? But that's an example of what could happen. Why did Jack the Ripper do those things? Well,
somebody had to come back as him, right?
Well, someone was him, right? And someone was him at that time. So there could be the challenge was too much. I also say that about World War II and the Holocaust. When people were born in the 1920s in Germany, they almost had no chance. Like, you want to talk about putting yourself into challenging circumstances, right? You're going to get caught up in this rhetoric. Either you're Christian or Catholic German, and you're very proud of your nation. Well, what decisions are you going to make in the 1930s, leading into the 1940s, regards how you treat Jewish people, how you treat communists and other people? What decisions are you going to make regarding how you deal with Hitler? Are you just going to join in and be horrible? Or are you going to be one of those people who fought it and probably died because of it, because they got the first ones taken to the camps, or the people who fought it. So
or you come back as Schindler.
But the thing is that's that challenge in that lifetime. So it's hard. We shouldn't judge necessarily, like to say, oh, you know, like
that's the human ego.
It's those, sometimes we fail in our challenges. We don't make the right decisions as humans.
Well, here's a question for you with respect to reincarnation. Do you think that the essence can time hop? Do you think we can go back in time to relive a life, or do you think we can only move forward? Because, you know, if we can travel and zip along.
And again, too mind blowing for me. That
Michelle,
like that's
sorry,
like I feel like we should have like
okay, let's go.
That's a roundtable discussion with quantum physicists where John and I would be in the audience listening.
Think about it, because when you're a really good remote viewer, you can go back in time to present and forward and move around.
But we're linear thinkers. We've been programmed to think time is a creation. It's a human creation because it provides a linear viewpoint. So we can mark things through linear. But once you step out of that linear timeline and you start to think about the possibilities from an interdimensional perspective, there is a chance, we don't understand enough about it to talk like experts, but there is a chance we're living multiple lives. And whether it's fractals or pieces of soul, having a journey, it's energy. I always go back to the fact that we're all from the same space dust. We're all from the same source.
And energy can split. It can do many things.
And not all of us are doing it.
No, or we're at different stages, and we're on our journey of learning. And maybe in another lifetime or in a different dimension, we're having this conversation and we're speaking from authority. And we're saying this is the way it is because we know. Well, we've learned so much over the past 2 years as it pertains to the soul and the soul journey and soul mates and soul discovery and synchronicities, and why it's important to tune into that. Because I think if there's anything to take away from this, there are people that are listening and watching and saying, I get it 100% because it's happened to me, or it's happening to me right now. And other people are like, I don't understand what this journey is. And it might be a little overwhelming and a little bit intimidating. But I think the biggest thing is that you have to be open to the possibility that the consciousness survives death and the soul journey is the thing. And that this is just a temporary stop along the way of the soul journey, where we're in the meat suit today. We get to enjoy the meat suit.
On the grand scheme of time and space as well. Like it seems like a lifetime, pardon the pun, for us. But realistically, like it's like this.
Yeah.
I think it feels that way as you get older as well. You just think back to like, oh my gosh, like where's the time gone? I mean, we find ourselves saying it, but it really does speed along pretty quick.
We'll see you tomorrow, Heather.
See you tomorrow, Heather.
They're all joining in today. Wrong night.
Well, listen, I have to say,
now.
Miss Heather Besser is one of the reasons we've learned. I mean, that she's part of that journey that John and I have been on.
Yeah.
So I'm so glad she's going to be on your show tomorrow because, and Dan and Teresa are wonderful people.
They are. They've been on several times.
Just the salt of the earth, just really. And Dan's a hoot. Funniest, one of the funniest guys I ever met. But Heather is, we consider ourselves incredibly lucky, blessed, you name it, because of, we've been on the journey and then the people we've met along the way. And I couldn't feel more blessed than I am because of that. And Heather is a big part of that. And
absolutely. She's connecting you.
She's the conduit.
Yeah.
So, not many people have her exact kind of gift. I mean, I know a lot of people have different kinds of gifts when it comes to high ability.
Strengths and different gifts. Yeah.
Of course, and I think with her, it's a straightforward, like, oh my God, like you just like John can attest to this, but like, I mean, it's been an incredible, wonderful journey. I mean, it really
meant to come together to do this together.
Without question. And that's another soul connection, by the way. We talk about soul groups.
Soul group, because she's also assisting Dan and Teresa. So this is this is incredible. It's her journey, and you guys are all along with her too. You can look at it in different.
Well, that goes back a little bit to what I was saying earlier, is about taking the step. In it wasn't a step; it was a leap with Heather, and Jack took it first, and then grabbed me by the shirt collar and yanked me into it as he was going down the rabbit hole. He said, "You got to come. This is amazing."
Like a cartoon, right? Yeah,
it was. Yeah, it was. But once we were, there is such a comfort with that now that before it was. I would say it's something that we believed in. We've talked about it for the 30 years we've known each other, but we've never had the ability to make the connection at the level that we have. That is not about, it's less about ego and human experience and more about connection to our energetic beings. So you have this understanding, and through that understanding, as Jack mentioned earlier too, is that death is not something to be feared, not necessarily something to be anticipated, but knowing that the other side is there for you and is waiting for you, whatever that interpretation of the other side is, heaven or whatever you want it to be. It's there for you, and it doesn't have all the constructs around it that societal and religious connotations assigned to the afterlife or death. It's very, very different. It's an extension. I've had conversations with friends who've had conversations with their past daughter after she passed away, and they were almost to the point where they were like, she seems to be less inclined to talk to us about our pain and more inclined to share with us the amazing things that she's experiencing now in the afterlife. So it gave them a tremendous amount of comfort in knowing that, wow, our daughter's experience with us was as much about us learning from her as it was about
gift. That's
and it made them. They made them, I think, appreciate. One of them was a kind of a skeptic, and now he's reading books and talking to other people about it. It's changed his perspective on this completely different person as a result of it.
Yeah, I agree. It's so important. We have to keep growing. The evolution, our evolution, but the evolutions of our essence is paramount. That's why we're here. It's like being in a classroom. Everybody else who you meet on your journey is just part of that journey, whether we're here to give them a little push or they're here to give us a little push. And nobody knows for sure, but I think we have this roller coaster of up and down. And it's sad because, like, for me, I always feel that sometimes some people just they're not that they want to be, I don't think they can't help it. We all work at different paces, but it's like being a hamster on a wheel that just can't follow with us. And then I find myself through my life saying, God, wonder what happened to that person. We leave them behind. And then there's that sense of guilt because we've left them behind. So I think it's reframing the thinking to, well, they're part of our journey's done. Maybe now they'll help somebody else at that same stage, or they really do just stop their, I'm sure nobody stops, evolving. It's just a matter of which stage that they're at. And some of us travel alone without them.
And we have to realize that people are at different stages. Some of us have lived more lives. Some of us are done with lives. But I have to say this because I would try to do this without getting emotional, but we've been mentioning some people, and this is another thing you learn. You're never alone. And sometimes it feel in this lifetime, in the world we live in the certain cultures that we might live in, that we're alone. We isolate ourselves. We feel alone. And what I've learned is there are people, spirits that you're connected to on a level that you couldn't even believe the amount of love that's there. They are always there, and they're always having your back. We talk about spirit guides. They exist. We could talk about the intricacies of that, but how many, what it's all about. But the bottom line is you have people. There are amazing people. I say people. There are spirits up there who have your back constantly. And not to say nothing bad is ever going to happen in your lifetime. That's not how it works.
No.
But if you ask for help, if you say, hey, I need advice, and you think you'll be talking to yourself, but you're not talking to yourself. Your intuition is them. And I want a shout out, and I think we all need to shout out to those spirits, those people that we're connected to on that soulful level that are always there for us. And they've taught me more, and they've taught Heather more, and they've taught John more, and they taught all of us more than we could ever imagine. Because a lot of times we think, well, we're learning that on our own, or we're da-da-da. But when your intuition is talking to you, it's your higher self. And what's your higher self connected to? Them.
Yeah, it's a
So just a shout out to, they know who they are. They're listening right now. I know they are. John knows it. And they are amazing. And the amount of love that's there, because, and this goes back to the one thing we talked about when we talked about the Knights Templar show. And what was Jesus' message? What is that Christ consciousness? It's love, period. Bottom line, simple. It's love. And when you feel that, if you're connected to source, you will feel a love that's so overwhelming that you cannot describe it to other people. It's indescribable. So that's the lesson here. The lesson is, it's soul connections, but what is it all about? Well, it's about love. And there are lessons to learn. Life can be difficult. Life can be hard, but always know you're connected to source. You're connected to these other people in your groups, and what we call them, your posse. I don't care what you call them. Your spirit posse. That's a good one, John, actually, spirit posse.
Yeah.
Like, they're there and they love you so much. And it's not just that, it's loved ones who you've lost over time. Amelia, your brother, like, it's like, they're there, man. They're loving, and they want to hear what you said. Like, that's why he's like, yeah, you go, Amelia. Yeah, that's right. Because that's exactly right.
Yeah. When you're saying all of this, what comes to my mind is that clip that we've all seen on social media of that man who's walking across the street and some white lightning comes in, pushes this man or woman out of the way of a car. And people say to me, well, how do you explain that? I go, easy. Everybody has free will. Somebody was speeding. Somebody wasn't paying attention. And that spirit guide comes in, or that angelic being comes in, because you have your own timeline. And that's why I say, when people pass, that's it. Like, it was their time.
Right. You just got a great Michelle who just, that to me, you had to be ready.
Yeah, I was going to respond to it too. I was going to say something as well. They didn't wait. They waited for you to be ready. You had to be ready. And they were there all along. You just probably didn't notice them.
No, some people have to have near-death experiences to be open to all of it. So not everybody has this gift or this, these abilities. They always have them, but they're not open to them their entire life. Sometimes it comes later on, and I've seen that a lot.
So many people have lived a completely different life up to a certain point.
Yeah,
and then the switch is flipped, and they're tuned in, and they're tuned in a way that amplifies the world in their belief and their understanding in a way that they cannot relate to their old life anymore. And they change their paths. We know people who have completely redirected their path to help other people, given up careers, relationships, to say, this means nothing. That's all part of the soul journey, or the human journey. My soul journey is more important, because I know that I can impact other people's lives by doing that.
Yeah. It's sometimes the way we're raised that gets in the way.
All the time.
Yeah.
Conditioning.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
For me, I love doing planetary energy work, probably the most, because you see it just in how certain areas that you tune into, how it all works and functions after you've been there. It's just hard to explain. Light workers, people who work with planetary energies, would have an understanding of that, but it's just very rewarding doing energy work, even with people. Not just so much, the planet, because when you feel that connection to it, you feel a soul connection on a whole other level.
Mm-hmm.
Like literally, because you are connecting to the essence of Gaia, Sophia, whatever,
Right.
that her.
Right. And I feel like with you,
she
Michelle,
sustains us. Sorry?
with you, Michelle, it's so obvious that you're a teacher. That's your purpose. Your purpose is to share.
You're an aggregator. You're an aggregator too. You're bringing together a lot of pieces so that they can speak their piece, and you're like the conductor of an orchestra.
Thank you. Thank you.
She's an incredible teacher.
Thank you. Probably why I feel exhausted, but that's all right. My brain, not so much. It's always going. The rest of me is just trying to catch up. That's why sometimes I'll throw a zinger at you and you'll be like, I don't know. Sorry, did that come out? So, my mouth just gets funny because my brain's constantly going. But no, I do believe we all have our role to play. And it's very important that once you realize what that role is, that you just keep giving of yourself, because on the scale of working with energy and working, whether you're working with people, or whether you're working with the planet, or whether you're working with, shall we say, other dimensional beings, whatever the case may be, if you're able to do it, you do it, because you can't just sit there and spin your wheels. You have to put that out there. Mm-hmm. It has to keep going.
Right.
It has to keep going.
Well, the whole synchronicity thing, once it happens, when you get hit with the lightning bolt, you got to look for more. You got to be open and receptive to more, because it's never a one and done. It's usually something that's meant to shake you up, and meant to kind of, it's like a tuning fork to a certain extent. It's like you've been tapped to tune in, and I think that once you have that, you want more. You really do, especially the journey that Jack and I have been on the last couple of years. It's almost to the point where you're like, can we just get a direct line? Can we just have the ability?
It doesn't work that way.
You want a shortcut? That's what you're saying.
Yeah. Well, it's more
like
a matter of
having
the gift, having
the Ozempic
of
the paranormal world.
But just having the gift of the people that have the gift, we can't relate to them in the same way that they really can't relate to us, because they're like, well, haven't you had spirit talking to you your whole life? Haven't you seen beings your whole life? And like, no, having conversations with Heather, she said it wasn't until she was much older, like a teenager, that she was like, don't you all see what I see? You don't, I'm different, type of thing. It's just that your journey is completely different when you're tuned in. Well, and you might be tuned in.
You can't talk about things like that in certain generations.
Oh,
that was a family secret. I was always said, you can't go talking about things like that. Why not?
Well, I have a good friend who was sharing a story about an ET encounter that she had, and she was sharing it I think she said she was playing a game with some friends. It was like a group of couples together, and they said, throw out three things. One of them is true, the other two are lies. And one of the three things she threw out was that she had an ET experience. And these people were like stunned by that. They're like, well, we never would have thought that. And she said later that night, her husband said, I think you need to stop throwing the ET thing out at parties, because it's not something that everybody's open to. So her immediate response to that is that I'm being stifled. I'm being told not to talk about something that was a visceral experience for me. And I'm being told that that's not something that people talk about in company. Well, I think more people should talk about it in company, because then it becomes part of the discourse that we need to have as part of this human journey, as opposed to what we've been told to believe by dogma and control mechanisms. It's
conditioning.
Well,
I think it's what's held us all back as humanity. Basically, we fall under the puppet masters, and it starts with what's in the food. It starts with what's in the schools, what's in everything. It's conditioned to just keep us, under a thumb.
And
you almost have to rise above it.
Yes.
But that's really hard to do. And it's usually, like I say, it's an experience. Like something has to happen for you to not be, to get knocked away from that indoctrination.
There's a lot of gaslighting.
You know, and be like, wait a minute, this is not right.
Yeah.
You know, and this is not the way life should be lived.
Mm.
Again, I know people, I have family members, they go through life like robots. And it's all about how much money you make and your job, and
it's sad though, isn't
having
it?
a crappy job and being miserable and then retiring and then dying. I mean, it's like, what in the world? Like, I can't fathom that.
Judge Judy once said to someone in her courtroom, I find her so entertaining. I love Judge Judy. She said, honey, you need to find something that you're good at that you can make money from. That's how you live a happy life. To change that pressure. You know what I mean?
The American dream is not a dream. It's a nightmare. It was constructed to keep people, the hamsters on the wheel.
Well, we're very much a gaslit
But here's the
world
thing,
right now. I think everybody would agree to that.
But
there's a lot of gaslighting.
Even with Judge Judy, right? You have someone who's saying, and I agree that you should find what you love. There's that book, Do What You Love, The Money Will Follow. It's a classic book, right? And you said, but if you do what you love, because you're going to be good at it, the money will eventually follow. But that's all relative too. They had that documentary a couple of years ago. That's, you know, they found that the happiest man on earth was a rickshaw driver in India. He was penniless.
Happiness
and he was the happiest guy in the world. Money is the root of all evil. I can't even begin.
Well,
and in this society, in America,
right?
What's that?
If you own nothing, there's nothing for them to take from you.
Yeah.
But let me,
you know, the monks, right? Like,
let me share this story with you. The owners of the Four Seasons hotels, right? The Sharps. My dad worked for them side by side for over 46 years. My father actually got off of a streetcar 2 stops too early and just happened to meet Max, who was a Holocaust survivor from Poland.
Synchronistic.
Yes. So my father ended up being like the right-hand man with a 3rd grade education, but this isn't the story. The story is about Isidore's son, Christopher. Christopher was 18 years old when he passed from cancer. He was the same age as my brother, so he would have been 64 this year. And he said to my father, because my father would go to the cemetery all the time because the Sharps traveled a lot for work, obviously, the international hotels everywhere. So my father would make sure to go to the cemetery every week when he was away. And he said to my father, all the money that I have, I couldn't save my son. Because they came from that really poor and tragic life. His father left with nothing, ran, and built this incredible life and lived to be 102. Let me tell you, Max Sharp lived a long life. And you can't do anything about it. But you know what he did do? When Terry Fox was running across Canada, he tripled the donations that he had, he had raised by the time he got to Toronto. And he was giving back to try and help save somebody else's child. That's when you know that money's nothing, because you're giving back. You're not building you're not building a fence. You're building a longer table, And I think we learned a lot from The Secret, in the sense that you really have everything you need. Your wants are a different story. So you really do have what you need. If you have a house or a roof over your head, it doesn't have to be a house, and you could feed your family, that is joy, and means so much to someone on the other side of the world who can't provide that.
Yeah, there's a North American perspective, a Western perspective, that money and success is
happiness.
So many people will talk about these underdeveloped countries, or they choose whatever words they want to choose. But I can tell you through my travels, I've spent the last year in Southeast Asia, and some of the happiest people I've ever met have been from during that time I've spent there. Their happiness comes from what they have, not what they want.
No.
It comes from their connection to family, and it comes from their connection to their elders who have passed.
Right.
They celebrate, they welcome them in Bali. They welcome them twice a year. They set out food. They have them come back to the home. They basically open their doors to have them come back home, and they look forward to it. They embrace that. That's just, the next evolution of the spirit is to go from the earthbound plane to the next plane.
They're so much further ahead than us, aren't they? Though,
further. And they're comforted by it. They're not fearful of it. And then you have, in the Western world where you mourn for a year and you wear black, and there's wailing at funerals. Not to say that people are celebrating funerals, but they're celebrating life, a life lived. Right. They're not necessarily mourning the loss. Mourning is ego. It's personal. It's not about the person. It's about me. And when you have a perspective of soul and soul connection, and if you understand that you're basically letting something go to return to its core essence and to its other soul connections, that you'll eventually get there too, and you'll see them again, then you have a completely different understanding of what a life on earth is truly about, and whether or not you're defined by wealth. Wealth is not financial. It's emotional. It's connection.
Absolutely. To people. Wealth is family. It's love. It's health.
Well, we live in a world of materialism. We certainly live in a country of you guys.
I can't say I'm not materialistic. I love my shoes and my purse. I'm not going to lie. I'm trying. I'm baby steps.
No, we're all guilty of. Listen, I'm not living in a hut. I'm not a monk living in a monastery.
No, but I can say to people, this isn't what's going to make you happy, but they can't see it because they're striving for that. And
station sponsor ID. Sorry, I gotta be that guy.
We have to pay.
No choice. We love our sponsors.
We have to pay the bills.
I love our sponsors. Just saying.
Yeah, I know. I lose track all the time, right? I'm starstruck. Okay.
Oh, is that what's happening right now?
Sure.
No, I didn't. There's a commercial?
No, you're going to hear me. Just me. Just
me.
Oh,
okay. That confused me. I'm like, what's going to happen?
We have a larger audio audience than that we do camera. So you are listening to The Outer Realm with Michelle Desrochers and Amelia Pisano, coming to you live from the beautiful city of New Orleans on 107.7 FM radio, as well as on the Gulf Coast on 105.3 FM radio. We are live on the Roku channel and archived as well, and just recently have joined the family of Alexa Prime. And Michelle gave it at the top of the show how you can access our show. Michelle, do you want to throw that in just quickly?
Just ask Alexa.
That's say,
Alexa, podcast, United Public Radio. Bam! Bob's your there.
I got to put that. I've got to put that in there because I can't keep asking her every night.
I know.
So tonight we have two special guests who have been on our show before, and we just enjoy having them back because there's so much to talk about. We are with Jack Roth and Jon Sumple, and we are discussing soul connections and all the different ways of maybe describing it and saying what we feel or maybe what you believe it to be. And there's just a lot of discussion and so much to learn. So if you're just tuning in, no worries, because you can stream our archives on any platform that you normally use. Search United Public Radio, then The Outer Realm to find us. Remember to click like and subscribe, please. Add us to your playlist so you never miss an episode, and kindly share us with your friends and family. So out to the gratitude portion tonight. A huge thank you to Folgers Coffee. Thank you for your continued support and sponsoring our show from the first day ever. We love you. We look forward to a long, long relationship with you. Thank you so much. Want to say a huge thank you to Steve McGinnis, who's a horror illustrator and a fantastic artist who creates also commissioned pieces as well. He has created our banner and our promo media that you see when you're looking up our show. He can be found on Facebook. Thank you so much, Steve. And sometimes Michelle posts clips. If you go to our Facebook group page, she'll post clips of some of his work. Our intro and outro is courtesy of Dr. Snick, the sonic surgeon, aka Justin Snicker, award-winning composer, vocalist, and musician. You can find his music on Amazon and Bandcamp. Stream on any platform as well. Find Dr. Snick posting on Facebook and Instagram. Thank you, Justin. And in your stories, you can also search him and use his music for your stories on social media. Lastly, and kindly, if you are watching us right now on one of our Facebook groups or on YouTube, smash that like button, hit subscribe, and please share with your friends and family.
And we're back. Wowzer.
It's a long one.
It is a long one. I know.
I have a request to kind of bring this back to the whole soul connection thing.
Okay.
One thing that has been an interesting conversation as we've been through this journey is when you find out who your soulmate is, mm-hmm. and your significant other or spouse finds out it's not them. and how they respond to that.
Yeah.
And
it's do you have to tell them?
Well, I think Jack and I have both been open, and a lot of it has happened in the presence of our spouses. So they're aware of this as well. Mm-hmm. But it creates an interesting conversation around the idea of what is our purpose as living beings in the human realm, and what is our purpose in being in the collective, universal, cosmic, spiritual, energetic realm, mm-hmm. and what is more important in the long run. So that doesn't mean necessarily that when we pass and we reunite with our soul group and our soul mates, that we're going to say, thanks for the fun time on the last round of the human existence. But I think it creates this kind of discussion around what is ultimately our journey supposed to be about. And I think we learn lessons. And I am, eternally grateful for the relationship that I have with my wife, because I'm learning through that process. Mm-hmm. But there's also this part of that journey as a human, when you connect to the spiritual realm, that it's like there's a lot more to learn there that I've never really spent time processing. Mm-hmm. And it creates this sense of joy, a sense of wonder, mm-hmm. a sense of a desire to learn more. And it's not, Jack has probably a different experience than me in his journey. But Jack, I'm just curious if you've got any thoughts around that, because it's been a fascinating process to connect at that level with the people with the energy that we know is around us all the time.
I'll tell yours, because I've had a real bad experience with that, because I'm brutally honest. So.
I think she was there to help that along.
Yeah, Jack, you go first.
Well, no, I think again, we're navigating soul connections, right? So this is what we're talking about. So the idea of we're born and we're and especially like I'm a romantic, I'm a hopeless romantic. Like it's terrible, right? It's like I'm a sad sack half the time.
Yeah.
But like, no, but listen, it's you're going to meet people in your lifetime, more than one, that you're going to fall in love with. Mm-hmm. Romantically. Yeah. Now I'm talking about romantically. And so you always say, well, was my first love. The first love is always special because it's your first love. You're most likely young and you have all this emotion that comes out, right? And it's this amazing experience to be in love for the first time. That's not necessarily your soulmate. And then you go through life and Frank Sinatra, you can get married and divorced 15 times. Elizabeth Taylor, well, who was her soulmate? Was probably Richard Burton.
Yeah.
but we're speculating, right? But we don't know. Like, it's like, well, who's the and this is something that some people have to deal with, is that your soulmate's not here.
Mm-hmm. Right.
You're going to go through life. You can have good relationships, bad relationships. You will fall in love. You will be madly in love. You will fall out of love. Relationships some won't work. The last one might work because that's who you're with when you die. I mean, there's all these different variables to that. But one thing that John and I have had to learn, not the hard way, was that, they're not here.
You're each other's soulmate.
No.
I should have
I needed to put some lightness.
No. Our respective quote unquote soulmates.
Yes.
And go lean over and.
And, oh my goodness, this guy. All right. Anyway, so
I know mine from a past life. So yeah.
Well, but the thing is, so how do you navigate in the world that you live in, knowing or not knowing? People go through their entire lives not knowing that their soulmate, their primary soulmate, is not here with them. So wouldn't maybe that translate into always know there was something missing? I always had a void in myself.
That's what I was saying at the beginning of the show.
Okay, that can't
not
work out
allowed
well
to know. Like, should we know? I think I understand why we don't know.
Yeah, I agree with that, because with knowing is challenging.
Hard. Yes. How do you navigate?
Really challenging, because you have to.
When I found out, I basically, being honest, and I think I was in one of those, like in my original marriage, first marriage, it was one of those karmic soul connections, like it just should not be a thing. Okay, who is teaching who the lesson is what I wanted to know. But I knew, and I had found out through regressions that, like, what I call the twin soul, the other half of me, didn't come back this time. And so he brought it up, but soulmates, and I just flat out went, oh no. That's not us. And
I think it's from the movies with him.
But I'm honest, right? Yeah. Like, we're having this conversation and I'm trying to explain, like, no, like, they don't always come back. And he was devastated and never let me live it down. That's how he navigated it. And then I had to navigate going through I don't think I really should have said that, because I think I really is as toxic as it shouldn't have been. It was just 30 years of like, what the hell am I doing? But with that being said, still, I guess you have to have boundaries. You have to just sort of say, no, I shouldn't have gone there. You can't always be truthful about everything, because if you guys have great relationships and your spouses completely understand, okay, I think we understand the gist of it, and
you don't want to hurt
because that means they have someone on the other side.
Sure. Exactly.
As well,
that's a big part of it too, because we all have it. So it's not like I have it and you don't have it. Like, I've had to navigate this.
Yes.
And having these discussions and saying, this isn't about me having and you not having. And it also is not, we're on Earth right now.
Yeah,
we're here in bodily form. It is hard to hear.
It's a hard thing to hear.
And so how do you navigate that? I think the only way you were told or know is that because you're ready. I was ready.
Right.
I wouldn't have been able to handle this 10, 15 years ago. And I've been able to navigate it the best I can. And I've been able to, because I was ready for it. And I think the same with John. There's no question about it. So most people never know. Most people do not know. They don't know. You go through life, but that's why you got to follow your intuition. That's why you got to follow just follow your heart, man. And be like,
I did.
But you learned from that.
But you learned that you did what you were supposed to do.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. But if they think that you're their soulmate and you're telling them, no, I'm not, like, that's a lot to take in. From someone who might, of course, especially if they don't, understand this kind of side of things.
But it's a little more complicated than that too, because you have your primary soulmate. There's also what we would call a sub soulmate or secondary soulmate.
Oh God!
You also have a life partner.
Yeah.
Like that you obviously have a life partner. Your life partner is basically your life partner. If you've been with someone for your whole life, that's life partner.
Yeah.
And there's great significance in that. You were meant to be together and learn and grow together. And whether you have kids or not, that's part of it, or whatever it is, that was all part of that growth process. And there's so much more to it, but in the end, it's all about love anyway. We all love each other, and in spirit, we all love each other. So none of that matters. Doesn't matter.
The law of one, right? We are all one.
It doesn't
Yeah,
matter.
it's a lot to take in from a human existence.
That's why navigating these things is something we want to talk about, and we want to do projects on, because we feel like by talking about this stuff and by getting people's personal stories and talking about that, and then talking to PhDs, that we can help people.
Yeah, the more people talk like we're talking, then the dialogue changes from being one that's fear-based to being one that's open to possibilities. And I think that what we've learned throughout this process is that it's more for us to understand. And every time we go through the new learning, it goes back to the whole idea is that more you know, the more questions you have. So we have tons more questions every time we learn something more, and it takes us a little bit deeper and deeper to understanding our not necessarily our purpose, but our reason for being. And it's not about the earthbound existence. It's more about this collective energy and universal energy, that we're a part of something. And this is a small part of that journey. And I think when you start to again, you take the little steps that lead to the big steps, and you get to the point of being where we're at in this process. We just can't help but want other people to get to the same point of understanding, or knowing, or remembering, or reconnecting. And then it becomes part of, well, there's the human journey, then there's the soul journey, then there's the cosmic journey, and we're all in it together. It's not about losing or being who's primary and who's first.
No, it doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter. It really doesn't matter. And you lose all of that ego.
Right. That's the ego in this. I mean, again, we have egos. We're humans, have egos. We have brains. And they're compute, and the ego's here. So, when we shed all that, we know it doesn't matter. But down here, like Amelia said, I'd be pretty pissed off. I found out I wasn't the guy's soulmate or whatever. So
I wouldn't be pissed off. I'm saying some people who don't see things spiritually would not understand it and
understand it at all.
Would be really hurt by that, because they're conditioned to believe that.
Right.
You found someone, you're so in love with them, that's your soulmate. They're conditioned by all those romantic movies in Hollywood. There's this saying online that I've shared for years, and I love this. And it says, every time somebody shows me a little piece of their soul, I fall in love with them. And I love that saying. Like I'm one of those people who loves to be in love.
Yeah.
Not like J-Lo, but like I love all of those things about it. But I think I get that from my dad. But
can I tell you a quick story?
Of course.
Because I want to go back. I want to go back 15 years.
Right.
Okay. I've known John a long time. About 15 years ago, out of the blue, I don't know what either we were on the phone, or I was down visiting you in Fort Lauderdale. It might have been that. And maybe we're having lunch at La Spot. I don't know. I remember what it was. And I looked at him, and with all sincerity, I said, John, I think I've lost members of my soul group, and I've become disconnected from members of my soul group because I feel a horrible void.
That's terrible.
And he looked at me and he's like, what are you like, why would you say that to me? And I'm like, because I'm feeling it.
Yeah.
Fast forward. All right. 7 years ago, I'm going to make this short, but it's important. Because when we talk about soul connections, there's two, I call them the M&M, mentors and muses. Mentors, think about that professor or that coach or that whoever it is, that grandfather, right? Or that great uncle who is just a mentor. There's something about what they teach you that sticks with you your entire life. That I feel like that's a soul connection. That's a spiritual connection.
Mm-hmm.
The second is muse. If you go back through history and you think about all the great artists, whether you're a sculptor or a
Venus de
painter or
Milo.
a writer, or you were Shakespeare, there was always a muse, right? There was what inspired these people to do what they did. And it was usually love. Certainly in the romantic, you know, in you know, it was Italy and Greece and those romantic, you know, periods. The Renaissance was all about that. So 7 years ago, Jon and I go out to Los Angeles, and we had made our first documentary about the Stan Romanek story, and it was distributed. The distributor wanted us to come out to LA and meet with them and say, okay, you know, what's next? Because this is done well. And, you know, we like the way you guys do what you do. You do a good job, and you're easy to work with. So we fly out to LA. Jon in Seattle at the time flies from Seattle. I fly from Orlando. We go to LA. We're only there like 48 hours,
Oof,
72
that's a long
hours.
flight.
A long flight, but we just had the main meeting, and that's why we were there. So we get there, have the meeting, goes very well, and that's when they said we brought up the idea of the trilogy. So it was a big moment for us, and they're like, absolutely, let's do it. So that was a big moment in our professional career as far as filmmakers go. And we were all happy about it. But the entire time I'm out there, from the minute I got off the airplane, in my head, I'm like, oh my God, I'm going to run into so-and-so while I'm out here. I cannot mention her name. And hopefully one day I'll be able to mention the name, but I cannot mention the name now. And there's a reason for that. We're out in LA, and it's an actress, but it's just random. It's like, it's just random person I had seen in a TV show a year earlier. Like nothing, there was no reason for me to be thinking this. So the entire time we have our meetings, we have dinner with Jim, Jon and I we meet with friends, we're doing our thing, and I can't get this out of my head. And it's starting to bug me, but I don't say anything to Jon yet. The day we leave, we go to the airport, we go in together. Jon goes to his flight because it's Seattle, and I go to my gate, which is a different gate. So we say our goodbyes. I go to the gate. I'm sitting there hanging out. I look up, and who is walking directly towards me? This actress. Now,
so did you manifest that?
That's what I was going to ask.
Okay, so here's the thing. If this would have been a cartoon, I would have had springs coming out of my head.
Yeah.
That's how messed up I was. I'm like, oh, so now, okay, ego, higher self, right? I have the two on my shoulders, and my ego's like, oh my God, what the heck? Like, what are you going to do? And you can't do anything. You can't say anything. You make a fool of yourself. and my higher self is like, be cool. It's okay. This was meant to happen. It's synchronistic. This was meant to happen for a reason. And then over and over in my head, it kept saying, it's about the work. It's about the work. She was with a friend. She winds up sitting right across from me at the gate.
Oh boy.
And
you
have
really
to understand
challenged.
now, I want you guys to think about the odds of this.
Oh, but you were being challenged.
Yeah. This is the universe. Not only this is the universe pouring gasoline on me and then lighting me on fire.
Yeah, it is.
Okay.
Yeah, it is.
So I'm like freaking out. I have no idea how to handle this. I like to think I'm a pretty cool dude. Okay. But I don't know how to handle this. I can't handle what's happening to me at this moment. I text Jon. I'm like, Jon.
Texted, called numerous times over 40 minutes.
I don't know what to do. So and the whole time, like, do I say something? But then, look, what do I say? Is she supposed to do?
Yeah. Will you be escorted by security if you talk to her?
Well, I said to him, like, go up to her, say
am I going to be
like,
Judge Judy? I mean, what am I going to be in prison? I'm like, I got to be real careful here, right? So my ego's like, don't take any chances. But my intuitive self is like, it's about the work. Don't worry about it. And then it's like, you don't have to talk to her right now. But there was a moment of recognition where she looked over. I looked up and she was looking at me, and she was staring because I feel like she recognized me. And I'm like, oh my God. Now here you talk about societal norms. I obviously know who she is because she's an actress. She doesn't know who I am.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not an equal thing right away.
It's those vibes you're putting out, and she's picking up on them.
Ridiculous. Okay, so you're right, exactly. And so what happens? I torture myself for 40 minutes. I wind up not going up to her because first of all, she was with a friend. Second of all, I'm not a fanboy. I've been in I used to be on sets of movies. That doesn't impress me. Okay. But this happening, I knew something was happening that was profoundly important in my life. So long story short, I go home. I'm beating myself up the entire time. I was like, should I have said something? Should I not have said? And I talked to Jon about it, and I'm like, okay, whatever. And I'm struggling for the next 3 months because I can't come to terms with what happened. And what am I supposed to do? It's about the work. It's about the work. My intuition's telling me it's about the work. So it's almost like, but all of a sudden what starts to happen is I become inspired and I start writing and writing and writing. In the meantime, Jon and I go back to LA to shoot our second documentary in LA, back to LA. And we're in, I think, Silver Lake area, Jon, if I'm not mistaken. And one of the people we were interviewing was this amazingly talented psychic. And she is a kind of like a hybrid, if you will, a starseed too. And we had a break and we're talking in the break and shooting. And when there's a bunch of people there and I'm talking to this woman and we're chatting and she shows me something like her roommate had written a draft of a book. And there was a photo on the front. It's about this Amazon woman who gets abducted and she has to fight in arenas in the universe. And it's like, it was just like a really cool idea actually. And they had this thing and this photo in front and just, for whatever reason, I'm like, oh, you know who would be really good playing her? Boom, I say the name. This amazing woman, and that's all I said to her. All right. And she looks at me and she goes, you're connected. And I'm like, no, because I was terrified at this point. This was 7 years ago. I'm not where I am now. And I'm like, come on. And she's like, no, you're connected, and you're connected in a way that, and she starts explaining this soul connection thing. And she goes, there was a moment of recognition, wasn't there? I'm like, yeah, there was. And she's like, okay. She goes, it's about the work. You need to just do the work and you will at some point reconnect through the work. Ask Jon. I go into the other room like, Jon, you're not going to believe what just happened to me. And he's like, oh my God, dude. And this was kind of like the beginning, like really the beginning of this particular journey. Right. But what happened from that? I wrote a book, got it published. We did 2 more documentaries. We're working on all these other projects. We have since written 2 scripts. It all started on that day in the airport for me. I've never been more inspired.
That was the catalyst.
That moment in time, that connection was the catalyst.
Yes.
And so now it's just, I'm continuing and I'm doing the work, and I'm, obviously doing the work for a lot of reasons, but one of the reasons is I will eventually be reconnected and actually meet her and chat with her, but in a very it's going to be about the work. It's going to be about creating as like I mentioned, the muse kind of thing. But this happened. And I can't overemphasize enough the odds of that happening, of me thinking about one person. There are thousands and thousands and thousands of actresses.
Right.
I'm in LAX. How many people go through LAX?
Oh, yeah. It's like a city.
And I'm sitting there and I literally look up, she's walking right towards me. And like, to me, she was glowing. It was like, I was like, I thought it was the rapture. I was like, what is happening? Right? This can't be happening to me. But I knew it was, because I knew all the work I had done leading up to this point was preparing me for this. So that's why that is literally why I'm on with you guys today talking about soul connections, because I know it's real. Right. And there's a connection. And again, I would never mention her name because that wouldn't be the right thing to do. She doesn't know who I am yet. She might recognize me when she does. She might be like, I'm hoping, Because again, I don't want to wind up on the cover of National Enquirer for some bad reason. So like, and that's my ego. Like, oh, you can't, don't go there. Don't go there. Can a soul connection overcome societal norms? Right.
Right.
And so how do you navigate
one thing
that?
to clarify though is that she's part of your soul group, but she's not your soulmate.
Correct.
So it's not like he's chasing down a Hollywood soulmate.
No,
it's
I
not
understand
about
that.
That is not. I am not that person.
Everyone has a role to play.
Correct.
And your soul circle, your tribe, there's many, terms for it, but they all come together when the time is right. There's key players that will help you along your journey, and they show up when you need them to show up. That was a catalyst that sort of put the fork in the road for you. You went down that road. Now you're ready to go back to the fork in the road, and there she'll be.
Right.
With the knowing.
Exactly. And ideally, maybe one day I have that conversation because we're friends and we work on a project. That would be the ideal scenario for me.
I hope you get that.
I really do. I appreciate that, Amelia, because
I really do. I think it helps, right? It helps. It's a learning curve and it helps.
Yeah.
And I believe that you'll learn even more from that and that it'll be beneficial to her as well.
Right. And in a year or two, if I come back on the show and I just have a black eye and I've just been bailed out of prison,
I don't think you're going to. Don't worry. My daughter knows Harvey from TMZ. We'll get you a good story. She used to do his show all the time.
And then we'll make a movie about it.
Yeah. There you go. Make a movie about
The Life of Jack.
Oh my God.
Real life documentary.
I want to go back to something that Alan mentioned a little bit ago, 15 minutes or so. He said, I suspect your real soulmate is that soul that you reincarnate with over. There you go on the screen. The thing about that, though, is that you're not necessarily reincarnating together at the same times. So time is different. Again, time is a linear element that we use here on Earth. Time in the ether is a completely different construct, our understanding. So you might be in this lifetime, your soul is present in the meat suit, in the earthbound experience, and your soulmate may be on the other side. And if you're fortunate enough, you have the ability to connect and converse and communicate from that perspective. So you might not necessarily always be going through lives together. You might be going through them separately. But if you think about the whole idea of soul groups and soul journeys, they've been happening for millennia, not just for the past 2 or 3 lifetimes. There's really good chances that you're moving through your existence in the earthbound plane multiple times with that group and sometimes without that group. So there's individual journeys for your soul, evolution. And then there's times when you're earthbound and together and experiencing things in that capacity. So it isn't always lockstep, we're here together and then we're not, which creates, again, interesting opportunities for learning. When you find out that your soulmate is on the other side and your soulmate is like, well, I'm not reincarnating again. I've done my journey is over. So I'll be here when you get back from your current journey, there. But it does create an interesting experience, and my personal experience with this through the learning that I've had with Heather, and she's sharing information, and I was able to go and do research and verify all of it. I could verify the lifetime. I could verify dates, places, names, and it's stunning when you learn that. But it also creates this yearning for more. You want more information. You want to learn more about where you were, what you've done, and where you're going. And that's been something Jack and I go way back from our initial discussions where the biggest questions that you could ask is, what happens when we die? Where do we go? What's the soul's journey? Those are things that we have always pondered and feel are worthy of conversations ad infinitum, because that's when we learn. It's instead of accepting where we are, we learn about what the possibility of our journey is from an energetic point of view, which I find I'm fascinated by that. I have a tattoo on my arm that says "What's next?"
Mm-hmm.
And I've been like that since as far back as I can remember. I remember as a 4-year-old, born and raised Roman Catholic, never really embraced it, but as a 4-year-old, debating my parents at that time over the idea of heaven. And they said, so you're telling me that when I die, again, this is the 4-year-old, I'm using big person words now, but at that time I was like, I don't understand that we die and then we go to heaven for eternity. And eternity is being a forever and ever and ever. There's no end. It just goes on and on and on. And it's like, yeah, that's it. And I'm on a cloud with a harp with my angel's wings for eternity.
In Philadelphia cream cheese.
Right.
It's like the commercial, right?
Yeah. That whole, I struggled with it as a 4-year-old and never embraced it. It never made any sense to me. And
well, your old soul was still speaking.
Yeah. And then I learned, and as I was exposed to things that were about reincarnation, as I got older, and that was a bellwether moment for me, was learning that, reconnecting with the idea of reincarnation when I was in my early 20s, and then going down that path and on the journey of learning that. And almost pretty much everything Jack and I have talked about once we got, and that was, we probably met each other within 5 or 6 years after I started really diving into that. So we were having those conversations and learning. And it is amazing to look at where we've been over the past 30 years and the journey that we've been on and how we're still connected to this lifelong journey of learning and understanding and remembering and knowing is
and you're still moving forward.
Yeah, there's still a lot to learn.
Awesome,
Yeah.
But your journey together is continuing as well, which is, so here you are, part of your one another's soul group, and you're just
we're not, our trees are nearby, but we're not, our acorns aren't falling from the same tree.
That's funny.
Well,
we're adjacent.
This has been a great show, and we're already there, top of the hour and such. So tell everybody how they can find you and what you have coming up.
Just our website is the easiest place to connect with us,
which is right here.
J3films.com. We've got a lot of irons in the fire. We've got our first feature film that we're currently developing. We have 2 more scripts in development. We have a couple of documentary films that we're currently exploring and developing, and dozens of ideas for others. So yeah, we've got a lot of irons, and even a television show in development that we're picking your brain, Michelle,
I know.
to help us with. So.
That's okay. Pick away. It's very exciting. Well, guys, thank you for joining us tonight. I know. Look at Alan.
That's why I went,
What? No.
It flies by when you're having fun, right?
It's true. It's true. It's true. It does. But you know what? Everybody's going to be back. We're just going to have different content, and I'm looking forward to it. So thank you for joining us this evening.
And great guests or great commenters. The engagement was amazing.
Oh, thank you. We're very proud of our chat room because our people are just amazing. They're very interactive and they're very knowledgeable, and I love they have a whole thing going on just together, like with themselves. So it's just kind of us jumping in with what they're all talking about, which is awesome. And even Karen enjoyed it, which is outstanding.
Hey, Karen. Yeah.
So anyway, well, guys, thank you, and you will be hearing from me.
Thank
you so much.
Thank you for having us.
An email already. All right, guys.
Thank you.
So
Have a
much.
good night.
All right, good night now.
Good night.
Well, everybody, we have come to the end of another fantastic segment here of The Outer Realm. Glad you guys enjoyed it. It was just a fabulous show. And thank you, Karen. Right back at you. We do love our chat room. And I definitely say that from the bottom of my heart. We do love our chat room. You guys make it that much more fun for us to do this. So, hopefully you'll keep tuning in and, keep giving us all of your insight. That's very important to us. Tomorrow night, of course, Dan and Teresa Duke are back, two of our favorite people as well, and Heather Messer. So you're going to meet the wonderful Heather that the guys are talking about tonight. And, they speak so highly of her, and Dan and Teresa are no different. They speak so highly of her. So we are interested in hearing about her part of the journey of discovery for them. And just provided amazing contribution to the research on their great-grandfather, Jesse James. And it's amazing. I always say the dead do speak. And mediumship plays an important role, more than you know, because it leads you on amazing journeys. And this is going to be one of those stories. So big thank you to Folgers Coffee for sponsoring tonight's show and every night's show. Thank you. Thank you. Big thank you to Justice Snicker, a.k.a. Dr. Snick, the Sonic Surgeon. Big thank you to Steve McGinnis. Please watch for this archive. It will show up on Roku as well, since we do air live. Unlike other platforms, it doesn't say there. You got to put it back. But you can also find us on Rumble as well. So, guys, without further ado, it's time to say goodnight because we are over. Good night.